I'd like to thank Chancellor Richardson, Dr. Torres, the Penn State Lehigh Valley Advisory and Alumni Board members, distinguished faculty, family, fellow honorees and friends, and of course, most importantly, the class of 2023. I'm honored and grateful for this invitation today. I've done many speeches before, and I have to admit this one was a little hard to write. I wrote 7 rough drafts, and then this morning I just closed my eyes and I picked one. So don't worry, you're not going to hear the one about crypto and NFTs, because none of those things actually exist, as we found out. But what crazy times we live in, right? I was just reading something, and in the last 2 months, we had the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th largest bank failures in US history. I'm not talking about 20 years ago, I'm talking about in the last 60 days. So think about that for a second. There's so much opportunity for you all out here to lead us into a better future. We have artificial intelligence now, and I hear it's supposed to replace humans, right? They said it's so good in fact, right? It'll take all our jobs. Why read and write when you have ChatGPT? Why go to the doctor when you have Dr. Gupta GPT? Seriously, right? We're living in the future, we just don't know it yet. Or is the future coming a lot quicker with all these new technologies and advancements? 40 years ago, it was the floppy disk. 20 years ago, it was the flip phone. 15 years ago, it was an iPod. 10 years ago, it was self-driving cars. There's this famous movie about a guy who was sent back to the past in the current future he's in because artificial intelligence has declared war on society. And so he goes back in the past and he's assigned to protect the only person who could save humanity. Her name was Sarah Connor. Meanwhile, there's someone else that was sent back to the past to stop him, the Terminator. I've built a time machine to come back to save Sarah Connor, and today, unfortunately, or fortunately, you all are Sarah Connor. So that was a Terminator reference. I know I'm not that old. So it was just a few years ago, I was sitting where many of you are today. And I was trying to figure out so many things. I was anxious, I was excited, I was nervous. I almost didn't attend my own graduation. But when I realized, okay, it's not about me, it's bigger than me. There are other people who helped me along the journey. I realized I had to show up. And ultimately, it's a team effort. I know you all are anxious to get out of here, and supposedly I heard I'm the only thing stopping you from getting out of here. So don't tweet at me. I remember my graduation, I was ready to go. I didn't even remember who my commencement speaker was, but then my friend quickly reminded me it was me. I was my commencement speaker at my graduation. And at that time, there was a phenomenal woman who convinced me to walk and speak at graduation. Her name was Dr. Nichola Gutgold, and she graces your presence here. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to attend today due to unforeseen circumstances. This is actually her first graduation in 28 years that she will have missed. So if you have time today, please send her your thoughts and prayers for a speedy recovery. There were so many people that helped me along my journey. There's another person who drove all the way here today, Melissa Doberstein and her son, Brandon Doberstein. And I'm just so grateful and thankful for you all to make that trip. So life has a funny way to bring you back to where it all started. And for me, it was Penn State. Education was a really, really important part of my journey. My family migrated here from West Africa, one of 7 during the time of the Civil War. And at that time, most people reference it as blood diamonds during the time of the war. And when we came here, my mom applied for a refugee lottery. So some of you are familiar with the lottery. Typically, you win money. But imagine applying for a lottery for your life. And so when my mom came here, we were really, really poor. Whatever poor was in the US, we were below that. One of 7, all sleeping in the same bedroom, trying to figure out what we were going to do to survive. My mom was really big on education. She said, hey, it's the greatest equalizer. It's the greatest equalizer. And at that time, it was hard for me to see that because I wanted the new pair of Jordans like everyone else. And she told me, hey, you have to focus on what you have. You have to focus on what you have. So it was challenging. It wasn't easy. The only escape I had at that time was school and the environment. And so my outlet became going to classes and trying to figure it out. And it didn't make it easier that I had a foreign name. My name was Abubakar Fofanah, or people call me Abu. And I had a very unique name. So I had to learn in the environment that I was in how to leverage the opportunities. And all I wanted was acceptance when I first got here to this country. I remember distinctly when we first got here, there's this holiday you guys all celebrate, Halloween. So at that time, we didn't know what that was. And I remember walking into my classroom and looking across all the cubicles, and everyone had costumes in it except me. And I thought that morning, like, here we go again, I'm gonna get made fun of. And little did I know, during lunchtime, I come back, look through my cubicle, and there's a costume there. And I didn't know my first grade teacher went to Party City to purchase me a Fred Flintstone costume. And so here was the world I thought was up against me, but there was this woman who decided, you know what, I see something in him. And that was the first time I truly felt like someone had my back. And Jean Meyer, my first grade teacher, she would always tell me, hey, Abu, you could write your ticket anywhere in the world. You just have to put your name on it. So when Sharon Teresa reached out to me to be here today, I took that ticket out and I wrote Penn State, Lehigh Valley. So here's what I learned from that experience, right? Good educators teach what's inside of the books. Great educators teach what's outside of it and what you need in order to have a fulfilling life, whatever you see fit. So some of you will go on to be educators, some of you teachers, some of you leaders and businessmen. Whatever it is that you do, ask yourself, am I doing everything I can to make a difference? Because there are times you're going to think and you're going to ask yourself, well, does this matter? And in fact, yes, it does matter. That was my beginning. The belief propelled me throughout school as more people came into my corner, because the neighborhood I grew up in, we were really poor. We didn't think about college. College wasn't an option for us. I thought I was going to go be a professional athlete or a rapper or a singer, but I couldn't sing. But and I remember my guidance counselor at high school at that time. I went to Girard College, and she told me, hey, where do you want to go? And I'm like, go where? Well, what are you talking about? And I knew I was poor, so I didn't know I could afford college. And she said, hey, but you have the grades, you really work towards this. So I started thinking about college at that time. And by the time I graduated, one of my big goals was, okay, well, if college is on my board, well, how do I get in there? And if I don't have money, how do I make sure I afforded it? So by the time I graduated high school, I received a full academic scholarship and athletic scholarship to Penn State, to the Schreyer Honors College. And that was one of the proudest moments of my life, because I remember taking that letter to my mom, and you know, it was just, from where we came from, it really meant a lot to her. And I remember my day when I was admitted to Penn State and Honors College. It was a big accomplishment. And I remember not knowing if I'd choose Penn State. So a mentor of mine at that time, Jeff Levin, he offered to take me to open student orientation. I walk in and I said, wow, these kids are really smart. And I didn't know if I could do it. I did not know if I could do it. And I had a feeling of doubt, because now I was surrounded with reality and I had to make a decision. And a lot of you all, when you leave here today, you're going to be surrounded by some of your realities, and you have to ask yourself, am I going to push through? So here's your first lesson, right? Lesson number one, write this down, right? You'll never be 100% ready. And what do I mean by that? And I'm telling you that now because you're about to go into a world where you're going to ask yourself, how did this person get this job leading all these people and they have no idea what to do themselves? And if you wait until you're ready to do something you've never done, you'll be late. So some people think they should start after they get the outcome. Like, okay, I'm going to get fit and then I'm going to go to the gym. It doesn't make sense, right? So when it should be, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to get fit in the process. So if you do it before you're ready, you'll be right on time. You'll find a way to get ready. So my time at Penn State, I was in a business school. I was in Smil Business School. And ultimately, I decided to major in supply chain and information systems. And I know many of you have no idea what I'm talking about. And at that time, my summation of what it was is that it's essentially another way of saying I had the skills to work for Amazon or become a CEO, and I chose the latter. And they trained us to think in lean methodology, meaning focusing on what's most important and using data to drive to the outcome. But like many of you, I honestly tried every major. I probably switched over 4 to 5 times before I decided on something. And I thought to myself, does anyone want me? And I'm not gonna lie, right? I almost did not go to college even. I thought, why would I go to college? I could figure this out on my own. I'm smart enough. After I graduated high school, I said, I'm smart enough. And I had my whole speech practiced. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go to my mom and I'm gonna tell her what it is, right? I'm gonna tell her I'm not going to college. And then a few years later, I graduated. And so the valuable lesson here is that there's a saying that parents know best. Seeing that I'm here today, that might be true. But there's another valuable lesson within here too. We don't always get everything that we want, right? We don't always get everything in negotiation, but we should still show up and put our best forth. I graduated Penn State in about 2.5 years. I was taking 30 to 35 credits a semester. I do not recommend. I did not have a life. In fact, when I used to go out to a party, I used to set a timer on my phone. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's time for me to go study now. I was a very different student. I was very, very disciplined. During my time at Penn State, I was involved in a lot of different orgs affiliated with Don. One of the orgs I was a part of that I really learned a lot from was the Presidential Leadership Academy. It was founded by Mr. and Mrs. Ed and Ellen Hintz, and it was around providing thought-provoking conversations, and the leader and the teacher of that class was the president of Penn State. And so this was really great conversation about the gray area. And what you'll realize in life, it's not always black and white. There's a lot of gray that you have to navigate through as well. So during my time there, I really got into entrepreneurship. One of the businesses I started was a clothing business called Motivational Apparel, which stood for MOAP. I started it my freshman year. By the time I was a sophomore, I had 16 employees, and we were making anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 a month as a college student. Like I said, I was a very different student in college. We had an article written about us at Philadelphia Inquirer, and the headlines read, "The next Nike lives at Penn State." We even had commercials that were ran during the Penn State football games. So here I was actually applying what I was learning in the classrooms. So a lot of times the professors gave me an excuse to not be there because I would go, I would learn, and then I would literally apply it in real time. And at the end of the day, I thought, well, if I fail to chase my interest and my passions, then I'll leave out with the same thing everyone else came here for, which was a degree. But if I could push myself and push my limit in the process of something I'm interested in, then I will leave with more confidence and a lot better learning at that time. So my second lesson for you all is never do the bare minimum in anything you do. How you do one thing is how you'll do a lot of things. So if you do the bare minimum, you'll get the same experience as everyone else. But if you create the experience you want, then you'll get way more out of it. And so I'm here today to also tell you about what to expect after graduation. When I was asked to speak here today and be the commencement speaker, I was honored. Who am I to speak? Typically at these things, the speaker is much older. I meant wiser, much wiser. Me, I'm not much older than you. In fact, I think that's the very reason they asked me to come here today and speak. Us young folks can really make a difference. We have a unique way of thinking about things. We're scrappy, we're innovative, and of course, we know how to use Microsoft Excel. We can make a difference. The old way of thinking is on its way out, and the world needs our creativity. When I graduated, I thought the purpose was to make a lot of money by any means necessary. I mean, I grew up poor, so I thought about money, and I could make money, then I could help my family. And I remember when I graduated, I signed an offer sheet working at a Big Four consulting, PwC, or PricewaterhouseCoopers. And that was, at that time, it was $65,000. And that was, at that time, the most my family had ever seen. My mom's ever only made $30,000 a year. She's never made more than that. So I remember bringing her the offer sheet, and she's like, oh, you have to accept. This is a great opportunity. And she told the next door neighbor told the next door neighbor, and eventually I was the $65,000 man, right? I'd walk around the neighborhood, they'd be like, hey, that's the 65K man. And I remember quickly doing the math when I got my offer sheet. I said, okay, in 20 years, making 65K, I'll be a millionaire. But I didn't account for taxes, because it comes and it takes half of that. And then I had to go back to my calculations, and I was like, okay, maybe 40 or 60 years. But I felt like I didn't have time to wait that long. I wanted my parents to enjoy the fruits, and to be honest, I wanted to enjoy the fruits now too. I mean, I just graduated. I was tired. We did a lot, right? I was tired. I remember how miserable I was doing the things I didn't want to do in order to get something I truly didn't even know why I wanted. And so in life, you'll do that. You'll go down this path that seems very conventional, and you'll realize you're a very unconventional person. And so you start on this path and you forget the reasons why you even started to begin with. So a mentor of mine who's no longer here but was a crucial guide and light to me was Mr. Chuck James. And he would always say, remember that when you leave this earth, you could take with you nothing that you've received, only what you've given. So what is the gift you're going to leave the world? Most notable men and women in history, the ones you come study and admire, contribute their gifts. So the third lesson for you all is find or develop your gifts, because it'll give you purpose, and purpose will give you insight, and insight will give you foresight. So you'll begin to start seeing opportunities that no one else could see because your gifts were given to you. When I focused on my gifts, hear me out, I began to have a larger impact. I helped so many people unknowingly. The underlying effect was it made me a lot of money. So all those years trying to devise a plan, doing the calculations to make more money, to figure things out, I decided to focus on what my gifts were. And when I did, it took me 12 months to make $1 million in sales before turning 26. I did it. And then I thought, well, what will I do for the next 40 years? So let me clarify. When I say gifts, I mean God-given or skills that you develop along the way. My skills were developed, and I spent a lot of time crafting and focusing on developing new and in-demand skills. So here's your fourth lesson for you all. Kindness goes further than being smart. Choose to be kind when you're in a situation. My first job after graduation, I thought I was the smartest person in the world. I mean, that's what you think when you graduate from Penn State. My peers and all of us, we thought the world revolved around us. We carried ourselves in that way. But some of us didn't believe or subscribe to this notion. And in life, it's a dangerous game to only be kind to people you know you could get something from. And what's worse is only being kind to people who have a higher title than you. So as everyone was trying to network up and play this dangerous game, I decided to opt out. I used to stay late at the office every day, and I remember working out one day, and someone beat me to the gym. I'm like, who beat me to the gym? And there was this guy bench pressing, so I came to help him out, and he was working late, and so was I, and this became our routine over time. One day, the company was having an event, and I see the same guy, but this guy now is taking out the trash. He's cleaning up the event, and I thought to myself, oh my God, that's the maintenance guy. That's the guy I've been in the gym with, working out, trying to get strong. And I could see my peers at that time crowding the managers of the company and executives during happy hour and being extremely rude to the maintenance guy. This guy was my friend. And I stayed after the event to help him out because I kind of felt bad. And I said, hey, I didn't know you worked here. I didn't know you worked in maintenance. And he told me, well, this was a last-minute event and that some of his staff couldn't make it, so he decided to take the shift. And I would then find out that he was actually the CEO of the maintenance company. And then I would then find out that the guys that employed him were peers of his that he went to school with. And he said, hey, which manager or CEO do you want to meet? And so that was a very valuable lesson for me. You never know who's around you or who you're having a conversation with, so choose to be kind. Kindness goes further than only being smart. Here's your fifth lesson. Your path to success is not linear. There's no right or wrong path, there's just your path. And the world we live in, comparison is a thief of joy. I get on Instagram this morning and I'm like, man, that sounds like a good life. That looks like a good life. It's hard not to feel like you're doing wrong things sometimes, or you're not living to your potential. But believe me when I say it might not make sense when you're in the yak, but the dots only connect looking backwards. Even though you're a computer engineer, you may not know that one calligraphy class you took would inspire you to one day start Apple and revolutionize the world. Just ask Steve Jobs. Or that one acting class you need to meet your Gen Ed credits would inspire you to become one of the most successful actors in the world. Just ask Denzel Washington. For me, it was a clothing brand. I started when I was on campus, and I didn't know how it would later play a major role in my life. It taught me everything I know about business now. It taught me how to work with people, how to sell to customers, how to serve people, how to manage a team in adversity. This would lead me to another thing, moving abroad to study fashion design in Italy after graduation and work for the Versace family. And that would lead me to another thing, being invited to help under the Obama administration, an initiative called Opportunity at Work in DC. When you look at my resume, none of it makes sense. I was living an unconventional life, which presented me with unconventional opportunities. What that did for me was give me more exposure than I could imagine. And that growth is why I'm here today. It would have taken me years to be here if I took the conventional path, to be right here in front of you. And many of you think there's only one way to do it, and I promise you there's not. Think about this. If you told me 10 years ago that the son of an immigrant would come to America and have these opportunities and be here in front of you telling my story, I would have told you, you were crazy, right? There's something that gets lost on me at times because I've done a lot of different things. And despite that, I'm so hard on myself. I know you are too. One of my mentors, Ms. Doberstein, and I'm paraphrasing, she would always tell me in between classes, I would go to classes and then I would come in her office when I was a student, and she would always tell me, success is not how far you get, but the distance you traveled from where you started. So travel far and travel across. And your sixth lesson, and my final lesson, is actually for the parents. You'll never know what your child is capable of if you do not give them the space to try, to fail, and to succeed. Remember, amateurs built the Ark, but professionals built the Titanic. Think about that. I'll let y'all simmer on that. So when we wanted to learn how to drive, you got in the car. You started by showing us what to do, and then we traded places. Together, we learned, and eventually we got it right. You knew you weren't always going to be on every car ride with us. You gave us the best training so we could get in the car and navigate alone. You held our hands, and we were very appreciative of that. With your help, we got another accomplishment together. Now we've reached a big test where we have to go out there on our own and kind of figure things out to prove to ourselves that we're more than capable of. You know, although Ms. Doberstein, when it was best for me, or my mom, or my mentor, my first grade teacher, but if they had continued to shield me from the world, then they would have limited me. So your job here is done. And if you just for one moment put your phones down and look up, you'll notice a job well done. So to wrap things up, to the graduating class of 2023, you're going to go out into the world and think you should have it all figured out. And I'm here to tell you that you won't. You're going to go out in the world and think that you can't make mistakes, and I'm here to tell you that you can. People will tell you what you're not capable of, but you have to have strong convictions in your own abilities. Listen, I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds it. It's you. So congratulations, God bless you, and thank you once again. Thank you.